So my buddy Matt Lazarski at the Bottle Stop reached out to me, said he had a broken rod that he was hoping I could turn into an ice fishing rod that he could use for bigger game like pike on a bait casting setup. So I picked up the rod today. I'm going to see what I can do with it. I'm not 100% sure how to go about doing it. I've never built an ice rod. I don't really even ice fish, so I don't know, I guess, all of the ups and downs. What he has given me here is a medium heavy blank that is probably, I'm going to say probably 4 feet long. And yeah, I think we can work with it. I mean, I think what I'm going to have to do is remove a couple of these guides, put a reel seat on, put a rod butt on, and then I'll probably have to replace some of these running guides with larger guides just to kind of funnel down the line. But one thing to keep in mind when you're building an ice rod is there's no casting involved. So it's not like I need to worry that much about my guide train and making sure that the line is going to flow through perfectly, because I mean, all you're doing is pushing the release button on your reel, letting your line go down the hole and waiting for the fish to come and bite it. So casting performance is not an issue here. And really all I'm trying to do is salvage the rod, make it into something that's going to be usable for him, and then get feedback at that point. If he likes it, great. And maybe it's something I can continue to do moving forward. Maybe he doesn't like it, but he's got recommendations for me that will be useful in the future in terms of trying to make something similar like this. But I'm hoping I can turn this into something usable and that the rod still has a little bit of life left in it. So I'll kind of walk you through the process, and yeah, we'll see what we can do. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is remove some of these guides. The reel seat's going to go about right here. So I think what I'm going to do is remove this guide as well. I'm going to remove this one, and I'm going to put a bigger guide on here. I might have to put a bigger guide on here as well. So I'll probably end up removing all 4 of these and then putting those back together at some point. So I'm going to do that first, and then I'll get down to gluing the reel handle on, and then I can get back to my threading. But I want to remove everything first, clean the rod up, see what I'm working with. The section where it broke, it's really a pretty clean break. He said that he caught it, I believe, on a downrigger device or a trolling rod holder device, and got a pretty good nick in it, and then he went to make a cast and it just completely broke in half. You can see it's a real clean cut. Usually when you get a clean cut like this, that's the result of user error, where you got a pretty good scratch in the blank, and it'll cut pretty clean at that point. If the graphite gives out, what'll normally happen is you get a much more shattered look, a much more, it looks like the rod blew up, and that's usually faulty graphite. But in this case, I could tell right off the bat that this was a user error issue. But it's really nice and clean. So I don't even know that I'm going to clean that up. I think I'm just going to slide the butt cap on over that. And we don't have any damage to the graphite, which is nice as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is just start removing these guides, and yeah, see how that goes. So when I do these, I like to take this is a relatively dull razor blade. I like to run it right down the foot of the guide. So if you stay right on top of that, you're running across the metal of the guide, and you can basically just shave right through the top. And then once you get through the thread, you'll see a little bit of shine from the foot, and then you can just peel the thread right off. Like, the epoxy doesn't get really under the thread, and lock it down. You just want to be careful when you're doing it. You can see the foot starting to shine through right there. As long as you stay on top of that foot, you'll be fine. And you can get under the thread and it just peels right off. What you're left with is a little bit of epoxy on both sides of the rod, but you'll actually use that to position your new guide that's going on. It gives you kind of the idea as to where you want to put it. Now in this case we're building an ice rod that's got different dimensions, so the rod, it doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm not going to redo all the guides. I'm just going to replace a couple of them, but I'm still going to use the same footing that I had, the same locations that I already had, just so I can blend in where the guides were. So I got the old guides off, and now I'm just going to take a little bit of isopropyl alcohol, just rubbing alcohol, and I'm just going to put it on a paper towel, just run it up and down the rod. There's a little bit of residue that's left, and there's some old epoxy. Now the old epoxy won't come off, but I use it as kind of a guide as to where I want to place the new guides. You know, if I were just replacing one of these, the guide would be in the exact spot I want it. So I'm not too worried about having some of that epoxy there, because it's, like I said, it's just acting as a place setter for where the new guide's going to go. And when I apply epoxy over that, it's just going to blend right in. You'd never know that there was old epoxy there. In this case, I'm going to use the same locations. I'm going to get rid of, you know, the reel seat's going to be back here where there was a double-footed guide. This one I'm getting rid of. I'm just going to put a little thread there just to blend that in, and then I'll epoxy over it. I'm going to put a bigger first guide, a bigger second guide, and I'm going to leave it in the same locations just to blend everything in. And, you know, again, we're not going to be casting with this rod, so the guide location, which is normally critical in achieving longer distance in your casts, isn't even going to come into play here. It's really just a matter of, you know, allowing the rod to battle the fish. So I just like to, you know, use a little bit of that alcohol just to kind of clean up everything. Now we're gonna take a couple of well, the first thing I want to do is find a reel seat that will fit on this. I'm not sure what size. It's going to be a small size. I'm hoping I have one that fits, and I'll start digging through them right now. So I've gone through all of my reel seats, and the smallest size I have is a 10.5, which, as you can see, is too big. It's not to the point where it's like super big, but it's definitely too big. So what I'm gonna do, I mean, ideally I would order the parts, but in this case, I mean, I can do a workaround. I'm just gonna use some tape to arbor up underneath to be like you would do with a spinning reel seat, a spinning reel seat. And yeah, that's what I'm gonna end up doing. I'll have a little bit of a gap up at the top. So I'm I'll be able to cover up some of that. I'm just going to arbor that up, and then I'll come back. I can thread over the top and epoxy it, and that'll look just fine. It's just going to take some tape arboring, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now and show you specifically what I mean. All right, so we've got our tape built up for the reel seat, our tape built up for the butt of the rod and the butt grip, and then we've got our reel seat grip. So now what we need to do is we need to take some of our 2-part epoxy. This is just Pro Paste that I use. One's a hardener and one's the resin. The thing I like with this hardener, it smells just like Berkeley Power Bait to me. I love it. So once you get those together, you want equal amounts. You don't have to necessarily measure it out perfectly like you would with your rod epoxy that you'll use on your guides, but you want to be close enough where it's actually going to harden. And I just put it in a little mixing cup, and you just mix it for about 30 seconds until it's fully mixed and fully just stirred together. I mean, it's going to be like kind of a light tan type color when it's right, kind of a creamy tan color. Doesn't take super long to mix either. It's pretty good. So now you can see it's a pretty good mixed, creamy kind of, I don't know, light caramel color. And then in this case, I'm going to spread this really heavily on the reel seat area, the whole rod. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We've got it all glued together. Little bit of a gooey mess. I just wanted to make sure I used a lot of glue in this case because the parts are a little bit bigger than they need to be. I think everything's fit in pretty tight. One thing I want to point out is that to clean up the rod epoxy, that you just use that same isopropyl alcohol works great. You can never use too much of it. You know, you can apply it really heavily. It evaporates, cleans up the rod really well, and that's going to be your friend anytime you're rod building. So I'm going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow I can get back and put the guides back on and finish up the rod. But so far it's going all right. It's definitely a little different than building a rod, because in this case I feel like I'm doing everything backwards to make it all fit. But we're making do with what we have, and I'm satisfied so far. So we'll check in tomorrow with you and finish up our broken bait casting rod turned ice fishing rod, and see how it turns out. Next day, rod is coming together nicely, dried, everything looks good. Yeah, I mean, we've got a little 4 foot, like, I don't know what you call this, like a bluegill shooter. I mean, I think it's going to work really good. Even if it's not a great ice fishing rod, I think it'll be a good rod for his little boy. I'm actually thinking that this would be a good thing to do for my 2 kids. But so one thing that I did, I originally had said I was going to put two guides in, and looking at this, I think I'm just going to put one guide in up top here, because I had mounted a bait caster on just a few minutes ago looking at it, and it's a pretty good setup. I'm not going to do everything, but when I just run the line through the guide, the first guide that I have, I get a pretty good angle at it. And I don't know if you can see that. So it's really like, I think I could leave it just like that. But what I'm going to do is just add one more guide. I want to put one more like power guide in, a double footed guide. And if I mount that on this guide right here, or where there was a guide here, this larger footed guide really allows the cone of flight of the line to go through it at a perfect angle. So I'm just going to mount one guide on, and I think that's going to be it. I don't think I need to do anything more to it. With it not being like a casting rod, being an ice rod, I'm not too concerned about performance. Like I said, I feel very comfortable. I could leave it as is. I just want to put one bigger guide on just to take some of that force of a larger fish. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on now, and then yeah, we'll get that drying, or we'll put a 2-part epoxy on that, put it in the dryer, and it'll be ready to go tomorrow, and we'll see how it turns out. Well, we've let the rod dry overnight, and we've got a pretty awesome little, like yeah, a little over 4 foot. I guess it's an ice fishing rod, but you know, really, this is going to be like perfect for kids too. It's got me really thinking about how I could make a couple of these for my boys. I mean, you know, with Hank holding it here, it's like this perfect little rod. I mean, it would be great for even just fishing bluegills or fishing anything, but I hope he likes it. I'm sure that even if it's not a great ice fishing rod, that his little boy will love it. And yeah, I can tell you what, if you guys break off, you know, you break a couple of rods and you still got a good section of the rod blank that's usable, I highly recommend doing this. You know, if you've got a couple of kids, you can put these together and make a really good quality, you know, rod for your kids. And it's a good way to salvage a broken rod instead of throwing it in the garbage. You know, a few bucks in parts and you're good to go. So I had a blast building this. I didn't really know how it would turn out. I'm very pleased. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing some more like this in the future. So if you enjoyed the video, guys, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share it on social media if you think you know people that may have enjoyed the video. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos coming up. What do you think, Hank?
Good.
All right.
That's a short one.
It's a short rod. See it.